In this video, we're going to talk about installing plugins for NeoVim. If you want to follow along with the video exactly with the same code as me, you can go to LunarVim, NeoVim from scratch, and you can check out the O3 plugins branch. You feel free to follow along with your own NeoVim config too. That'll be totally fine. We're only going to be adding like one file to do this, so you can follow along with your own, your own NeoVim config, and you should be able to do all the same stuff I'm doing in this video. All right, so if you've already checked out the plugins branch here, and you already understand what init.lua is and the Lua directory and all that kind of good stuff, then you'll be fine watching the rest of this video. If you don't know what these things are, I recommend going earlier into the playlist that this video is in and just getting an understanding of what all this is right here. I explained that in the earlier videos. All right, so let's get started. The first thing we're going to do, and I should mention actually that we're using packer.nvim as our plugin manager. It's 100% written in Lua, which means something to people who are trying to do everything in Lua now with the new NeoVim support for Lua. It's probably the most popular plugin manager for NeoVim right now. Probably the other one would be Vimplug, but Vimplug's written in VimScript, and I guess people are trying to move on to different things. Packer is probably my favorite one anyway right now. It's packed with tons of features, but we're not going to use all of them, and I'm going to try to explain as much as I can in this video, at least enough to get you started and use some pretty cool advanced features. And so let me show you the first one, which is that when I open a file for the first time, like I just cloned this config down a second ago, it installed all of my plugins for me. And so we're going to talk about how we did that, but first let's talk about our directory structure here. So if I do something like tree here, you can see that we have our init.lua, then we have our Lua directory, user, and then we're just going to keep plugins right next to our options and key maps files from the earlier videos. But yeah, so that's where we're keeping it. You also notice this new directory here called plugin and packercompile.lua. I'll explain what that is later on in the video, but for now we're going to be focusing on this plugins.lua file. So let's open that up, user plugins.lua. All right, and let's make it nice and big, and I'm just going to explain what each chunk of code does here. And this is how I'm going to automatically get plugins to install in startup and a few other cool things that I think most people want but don't really know how to set up. All right, so what this chunk is going to do is it's automatically going to install Packer if it's not already there. So you can see that we have an install path here, and it's pointing at packer.nvim somewhere in fn standard path data. So where is that? I'll explain that later on in the video where I show you where all of your plugins go. All right, and if it's not there, what it's going to do is it's just going to clone it into there and then automatically add it to your current running instance so that it just is set up and works. All right, so let's talk about this here. This is an auto command. So what does this auto command do? And if you don't know what an auto command is, that's totally fine. I'll explain it in a future video, but you can just think of this right now as a chunk of code that whenever this event happens, right, this buff write post, which is really just me writing this file named plugins.lua, what'll happen is I'll source this file and then I'll run packer sync. So packer sync is a command provided by Packer and one of many commands, and I'll explain what those commands do later on in the video as well. So if I save, you can see that automatically if I save this file named plugins.lua, it'll run Packer sync, it'll update the plugins, and it'll compile everything and just set everything up whenever I save this particular file. So that'll be useful whenever we install new things. Now the next new concept I'm going to explain here, and this is kind of more of like a Lua concept, but it'll be really useful. We're going to use this pattern constantly throughout the config in the future, is what's called a protected call. So what we're doing here is we're requiring Packer, but in a protected way. So how we would normally do this is we would do require like this, and then we would do Packer like that. And then if we wanted the module in a local variable or something like that, we can get an instance of this Packer module like this. So this is basically, this line right here is the same as this line right here. The different, or this chunk of code right here, the difference is when we require Packer here inside of the protected call, and see this Packer instance right there, same as this one right here. But if this fails, like if it can't find Packer for whatever reason, then we'll see that the status will return that it's not okay, and then we'll just return. If you'd like, you could, print something out here saying, that didn't work or something, whatever it is. Or you could, instead of running a print, you could even just do vim.notify. I think should also work. So that's another thing that you could do. We're going to do it this way. The reason we're going to do it this way is just for safety, and you'll notice that in the future, I always do it this way. I hate when I just get random errors in my config. I'd rather just some message telling me, okay, this thing didn't work, and just immediately return, and don't try to do anything with the Packer module, because you won't be able to run init and you won't be able to run startup, for instance. All right, let's talk about this next piece of code. This is packer.init, and all it does is it changes the display so that it becomes a floating window when I do this, and that it has rounded borders. And that's all this does. It doesn't do anything else. If you don't like that floating window, if you don't like the borders and all that, it automatically actually starts as a split window to the right. So you can just get rid of this chunk of code, and then you'll have the default behavior. All right, and so this is where you're going to be spending most of your time. You're usually just going to ignore all of this, and you're not going to care because it's just going to do all that cool plugin stuff for you now. You are just going to care about this little piece down here, and not even most of it. You're going to ignore that piece at the top, and you're going to ignore this piece at the bottom. This just runs that Packer Bootstrap thing from earlier. You're going to focus right here. Everything you see, use, and then these strings here, that's what you're going to be focused on. And these strings are in this kind of pattern here. It will be user/repo. And that's because all NeoVim plugins are just GitHub repos with like Lua directories inside of them, and they just provide you some Lua functionality or VimScript functionality. All of your VimScript, your favorite VimScript plugins will also work just fine with NeoVim. All right, but anyway, that's all it does. So they're all just basically GitHub repositories, and we just install them by adding them here. And I'm going to install like a few plugins in a minute, and we'll show you installing a bunch of different things. And as you progress in this series, I'll be installing probably like 20 other plugins or something like that I think are pretty useful. All right, so first one here is going to be packer.nvim. What this does is it actually updates and manages Packer for us. So anytime that we update this file by saving it, right, it's going to automatically update packer.nvim. Same as if we run the first command I'll introduce here, which is just packer update, like that. And that'll do basically the exact same thing. Now, let's talk about these other two plugins here. These are, as far as I know, they're still kind of necessary for other plugins. Tons of plugins just use these two plugins, so I just recommend having them. I'm not sure if pop-up still is needed. I'm not 100% sure about plenary either. I'm assuming some of this stuff will make its way into core at some point. But so many plugins rely on these two plugins being available. So I just, I'm putting them here so you just have them. And again, they're just GitHub repositories. You can go look them up right now, and you can see all the code that's there. So let's see. That's pretty much all I wanted to explain about this file. So we're going to probably talk about where plugins live. I'm also going to be talking about like lazy loading later on in the video. I'm going to talk about more commands and that Packer compiled file from earlier. So let's first talk about where do plugins live. So remember that data directory from earlier? So this data guy right here, and where it's looking for packer.nvim. Where that is if you go into local share nvim. This is the data directory, and you'll notice that I have a bunch of other plugins related junk in here. This is where plugins keep all of their data. So this is like standard where you find tons of stuff. So later on when we do LSP stuff, this is where your LSP servers are going to be, and a bunch of other stuff too, right? Like sessions will be saved in here, and inside of site is actually where all of our plugins are going to be. So let's go inside of site, and then we're going to go inside of Packer, or Packer. And then you'll notice two more directories. You'll notice opt, which stands for optional, and you'll notice start, which is, you know, plugins inside of here are automatically sourced. They just run on startup. So again, you'll notice now we have what in here? We have packer.nvim, we have plenary.nvim, and popup.nvim. So let's go down here, and you can see, okay, it just gets rid of the user there, and it's literally just cloning the repositories. That's it. So if you were to clone this repository, that's exactly what it would look like. So if we look at packer.nvim, the repository, under WB Thomason, packer.nvim, okay, WB Thomason, packer.nvim. All right, so if you do that, you'll notice that, okay, we have a GitHub repository here, .github, doc, Lua, test, so on and so forth, right? Let's go inside of there. Okay, and we'll do ls-a just to see everything, but yeah, we see doc, .github, .git, the Lua directory, and this is where all the meat of your plugins are going to be, is inside of this Lua directory. Now, you don't ever have to look in there, but if you are interested in what code is happening inside of a plugin, you can usually find it in this Lua directory here. And there's just a bunch of other stuff. I'm just proving to you that this is just a GitHub repository. Plugins are just GitHub repositories. That's all they are, right? Okay, so that's where your plugins live, and right now all of our plugins live in Start. And the reason all of our plugins live in Start is because we're not doing any funky lazy loading stuff. I'll explain how to do that later in the video, but I'll also mention, you know, that you should probably exercise a little bit of caution when doing lazy loading, and also when you might think that lazy loading is speeding you up, but it's actually in a lot of cases not doing anything at all. So we'll explain that later on. But okay, so we have this. We explain where your plugins are. Let's talk about, really quick, let's just talk about a few commands that come with Packer. So we have, and here's how we can easily do this, right? Colon, and then just type Packer down here. Whoops, Packer like this, and then press tab. Okay, and now you can tab through all the commands that come with Packer. So we got Packer clean, compile, install, load, profile, blah, 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 right? The ones you're going to be interested in, like if we do status really fast, okay, we have packer.nvim installed, plenary, and popup. That's what we have installed. If we do packer update, we talked about that earlier, it's just going to update our plugins. If we do, we do packer sync, it's going to update and compile, it's going to compile a file for us that Packer uses to kind of speed things up and wrap our plugins so that it can like profile them and do all like a bunch of stuff that you don't have to care about. Let's explain that really fast, just because you're going to notice that in your, right next to your init.lua file, you're going to notice there's a directory called plugin, and inside of there is a packer compiled.lua file. This file is going to look extremely confusing to you. You're going to look at it, you're not going to understand what's happening in here. I don't really understand what's happening here for the most part, and I don't really care what's happening here for the most part, because you can blow this file away, reinstall it, no problem. Every single time that you run packer sync, you can delete this file, you won't even notice that it's gone, other than it probably will speed up, it'll speed up loading up your plugins and all that kind of good stuff. And it'll also like do other probably like hooks and kind of wrap stuff and all that kind of good stuff. I don't want to spend too much time here, but you can see that we have our packer.nvim, plenary.nvim, and popup.nvim plugins here. Again, if you notice something maybe a little bit off with your config, or Packer's complaining about something, every now and then you could just kind of blow away this file, and you know, maybe that might fix it. That's kind of the only time I really interact with that file, but I just wanted to let you know that it's there. I actually recommend, if you version your Git or your NeoVim config, I recommend you probably don't even push that up, right? You just kind of put it in your Git ignore and just don't even pay too much attention to it. Okay, so let's talk about some other plugins. We talked about commands. We talked about some simple plugins. We talked about the structure of this file. We talked about the Packer compiled file. Let's talk about lazy loading, I guess. And maybe we'll install some other plugins. All right, so head over to the packer.nvim repository here, scroll down, there's lots and lots of documentation. You can read it all if you want to. I've never read it all. I've just read a few key things that I think are important to me. This is for initializing Packer, so you can, make a couple changes here. You probably don't want to for the most part, but if you really want to tweak things, you can do that. And this stuff is passed to the packer.init right here. So you probably, you don't need to do anything here. The next thing is you'll look down here and you'll see specifying plugins. This right here is all of the stuff that you can add. So for right now, we're doing use, and then we pass a string, and this just clones the repository, no problem. But instead of doing that, you could actually pass a table, a Lua table. And remember, Lua tables are, the way you can think about them, they're just basically lists of key value pairs. That's really all they are. And I mean, you can mix strings with key value pairs. You can do whatever. It does not matter. But these are all of the options that you can essentially set for your plugin. And so this is going to lead us to be able to lazy load things. This is going to lead us to be able to pin plugins to specific commits. So like, for instance, if you notice that a plugin is broken for you and it used to work on an older commit, what you could do is you could go to the repository, you could click on commits here, you could copy the commit, and then you could set commit equal to that particular commit hash, right? And so that might, help you if something breaks and you want to roll it back essentially, and then pin it somewhere until you can figure out how to fix it. So you got that in there. And we're gonna talk about that too. We're gonna install. He's got an example up here of a bunch of plugins, and we're gonna install a couple of them just to kind of see how this stuff works. All right, so let's just install another plugin. We already installed packer.mvim. Let's install this thing here. I don't even know what this Vim closer thing does, but we could just come over here, and we could go like this, and we could save this, and we installed it. Now my color scheme is kind of hiding this, but you can, maybe if I go like this, yeah, there you go. You can see we installed 9mm Vim Closer, right? So we have that. I don't actually even know what it does, but that's how you would install another plugin really fast. I'm not going to find out what it does in this video either. Vim Dispatch. This one's going to be a little bit different. So let's install this guy and let's talk about how it works. So we're going to install this. Right, and then we'll just go like this so you can see it. We installed that. All right, and so where is this going to go? This is going to go inside of that opt directory from earlier. So you'll notice that Vim Closer is in the start directory where all the automatic on startup plugins go. And then you're going to notice that in opt, we have Vim Dispatch. I actually don't even know what Vim Dispatch does. I've never used it before, but it runs on dispatch, the commands dispatch, make, focus, and start. So what that means is that I don't know if see I have dispatch here. I guess it just makes stuff or whatever. So there you go. That's basically, now it's loaded. It wouldn't have been loaded if I didn't run dispatch, or if I don't run make, or if I don't run focus or start. It's not automatically loaded. So it'll run when one of these things happen. And that's what is called lazy loading. So this Vim Dispatch will not automatically start up when you start your NeoVim config. It'll wait till one of these commands runs. Now this is, in my mind, a pretty valid way to use lazy loading. Events are a little more dubious, kind of whether they really help or not. But yeah, so on a specific command, that kind of makes sense, right? So this will only load if we run some of these commands. That is why it's in the optional directory for our plugins. Okay, so let's talk about a few other ones. This is Ale, which is, I know what this one is. It's an asynchronous linting engine and this is for a particular file type. So it'll only start for these particular file types. So anytime you open up, for instance, I guess like a JavaScript file type, this won't start at all. So that's kind of useful, just so you don't waste starting this up if you're not going to use it for a particular file type. There's some require stuff here, so you can have plugins require other plugins. I guess pretty simple. You could also just put those plugins on top of it, but I guess it's just a little more verbose that lets you know that you can't even use this without these. So that's one reason to do it. You can install rocks. I've never done this. Lua rocks, I guess, are like packages that you can kind of pull down and install. I'm not 100% super, like I don't really know what they're really good for. I don't really know what people would really use them for in their NeoVim config, but you can do it if you want to. Let's see, you can specify rocks in isolation, so I guess you can use rocks like this. I don't really know that enough about Lua rocks to really say whether or not that'd be useful for you. I doubt it will be useful for you. This is using a personal one, so if you have your own personal one that's somewhere on your path, you can do that. Let's talk about this one. So this is Markdown Previewer. So let's copy this guy here, and let's talk about what he does a little bit different than some of the other ones. So when we do this, you'll notice that a few more things just happened there when we installed this Markdown Preview plugin. What it did was it actually ran this function right here. It cd'd into app and ran yarn install, and it will actually only load when Markdown Preview is ran. Let's talk about what the hell this means right here, right? So run cd into app and yarn install, like why do that, right? So this probably is a JSON, or not JSON, JavaScript. So it has some JavaScript inside of the plugin. So if we go into it, right, and then we should see a directory called app. Okay, we do see a directory called app. So what it did was it actually went into app, right, and then it ran yarn install. So then it went yarn install. All right, and then it did that, and then it installed all the stuff that it needed using yarn. And there you go. You probably could have done like npm install just fine too, right? And there you go. Now this will only work on Markdown Preview. Let's see actually if we can get this to work. We might not be able to, but okay, here's a Markdown file. So now if we run Markdown Preview, and I guess we'll just go like this. There you go. We have a Markdown Preview of our README. There you go. So that's that plugin that we just installed right there. And I'm not going to be leaving these in the config. It's just that, you know, this is just like kind of examples of how to use this. I'm just kind of running through some of them. Here's another one where you're going to run some sort of specific function. This one is pointing at some specific branch. It also has this other keyword called config. What config will do is it'll actually take like a hook function here, and then it'll run that function. As soon as this gets started up, it'll run this function. So you can see we just create some anonymous function here. It doesn't have a name. And then it just runs something. So it's just requiring the status line, I guess. And then you end the function. That's all it's doing. All right. And I guess it requires something else. So let's see. Get signs. Does that do anything novel? Not really, I guess. What about Color Buddy here? This multiple plugins in a single call. Yeah, I guess you could do that if you wanted to, but so you could just do use once and then just pass a bunch. I don't know. I don't think it matters that much. And then also we can alias them. So this is just a color scheme. We'll talk about color schemes in future videos. All right, so I already went over these commands. I kind of went over these things. Maybe is there any way to really talk about auto commands? I think one of the first one was an auto command, but it was kind of silly in a way. So this one loads on an event, and as far as I know, Vim enter will just like immediately happen when you open Vim. So as soon as you enter Vim, this event fires, right? And then immediately you'll be able to use matchup. So if I go like this, and I don't know if matchup's going to be like super, like it's going to be something that you can really notice that's installed. But so like if we go like this, and we'll go like this, and installed that, right? Okay. When I start up my config, it's only going to run on Vim enter, right? And so that's an event that happens. So what are Vim like events, right? I think we can look under help and then auto commands, potentially just auto command. Let me see if I can find this correctly. So if we look under auto command, then we scroll down, I don't know if it'll be in, yeah, here we go. Okay, so these are a bunch of events. So you can read about different events, and you can say that your plugin will only load when one of these events happens. So for instance, if you set it equal to buff delete, the plugin would only run if you deleted a buffer. Same with buff enter. When you enter a buffer, the plugin will load up. So it's lazy loading. It's depending on if the buff enter event is fired. And here's an example. Here's like a blurb saying like when that will happen. Some more useful ones might be, let's see, because a lot of these are just going to happen. Like you're going to open up a buffer like almost immediately, and then you're going to have to spend that time loading the plugin anyway. So I don't know how like super useful this really is for saving time for the most part. I think ones with like command are a lot more useful than starting on most events, I would say. Like buff win enter, that's not going to help you much, right? Okay, so yeah, these are just a bunch of events. Go through it, find out if any of these events are something that you're interested in, and you can lazy load your plugins that way. Again, lazy load plugins. Where do they go? Where do we expect to see Vim matchup? We actually expect to see it. Actually, let's go back out of this, and we expect to see it in opt, and that's where we do see it. So these are optional plugins that are loaded on lazy load. And these are plugins in Start that are loaded immediately. All right, I think that is about as comprehensive of an overview as I'm going to be able to give on installing plugins with NeoVim, using Packer, understanding what lazy loading does, understanding what commands you have available to you with Packer, how to do cool things like save this file and automatically install stuff. We're going to fix our color scheme in the next video so that, you know, things look good. But yeah, and how to automatically install your plugins, you know, just as soon as you clone your NeoVim config and start it up for the first time. So I think that covers pretty much all bases. If you want to read more, then you can check out the README here, and you'll learn even more. And then you can also go, this is another secret tip, right? Tons of repositories, which, you know, plugins are repositories. They usually have a folder here called doc, right? And you can go under doc, and then they'll usually have something like .text or something like that. And you can read through all of this, and it'll tell you, and this might just be a straight copy and paste of the README, but a lot of the other ones give you a lot more information here. So, you know, you can go read the doc, and then I recommend just Control F for whatever the heck you're looking for. So if you're looking for like highlight groups for this, maybe they would be available. Maybe they're not available, but sometimes there are for plugins. Anyway, this is where you would find it, right? This is where you'll find most of like all the interesting stuff about plugins that you won't always see in the README. I just figured I would, you know, kind of explain that. All right. So yeah, I think that's it. I don't think I really have anything else to add here. I think anything past that would just kind of be rambling on about mostly nonsense. All right, so again, you can check out the LunarVim NeoVim from Scratch repository. You can sponsor the project down here. You can support me on Patreon. There, it's very much appreciated, or you can sponsor me directly on GitHub. That's it for this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.